Even though I hate Captain Jellicoe, I'm glad he fixed an annoying Star Trek TNG Troy problem. Few characters in Star Trek The Next Generation inspire the same level of mixed emotional whiplash as Captain Edward Jellicoe. Introduced in the two-part episode Chain of Command, Jellicoe beamed aboard the Enterprise D like a thundercloud. Rigid, tactical, domineering, and allergic to the collaborative, open-hearted command style that defined Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He changed shift rotations without asking for input, dismissed senior staff opinions with almost clinical coldness, and demanded immediate obedience from everyone on board, especially Commander Riker. Many TNG fans still rank him among the most abrasive guest captains to ever take the center seat, and yet he was right about Deanna Troi. It pains me to type those words because, in almost every other respect, Jellicoe represents the antithesis of what makes Star Trek inspiring. But the man did one undeniably positive thing. He forced Troi to wear a standard Starfleet uniform. With a single direct order, he finally corrected one of the strangest, most inconsistent choices the series made with her character. Troi's wardrobe problem. An iconic costume with major issues. To understand why Jellicoe's order matters so much, you have to rewind to the beginning of TNG. When The Next Generation premiered in 1987, Gene Roddenberry envisioned a future where humanity had evolved past petty insecurities, including those rooted in body image or sexuality. Deanna Troi, half-betazoid empath and ship's counselor, was meant to be an embodiment of emotional openness. The producers placed her in a non-Starfleet, flowing, form-fitting jumpsuit to signal that she occupied a unique role on the bridge. But as visionary as the intention was, the execution quickly became a headache. Troi's wardrobe wasn't just impractical. It created an uneven narrative tone around a character who should have been a respected senior officer. Her form-fitting lavender jumpsuit and later cleavage-accentuating dresses were undeniably memorable, yet they visually separated her from every other ranking officer on the Enterprise. She counseled captains and advised senior staff, but the uniform told the audience she wasn't truly part of the command structure. The lack of rank insignia contributed to the confusion, and the soft aesthetic subtly reinforced the stereotype that empathy was somehow less legitimate than tactical expertise or scientific knowledge. While Troi herself never expressed dissatisfaction with her clothing, the fans and actors certainly did. Marina Sirtis famously recounted that she knew she had made it on TNG when she finally got a uniform, because only then did the crew treat her character as an equal. And that brings us back to Jellicoe. The Jellicoe moment. Abrupt, irritating, necessary. Why aren't you in uniform, counselor? Those 7 words have been echoed, memed, and debated by Trekkies for decades. When Jellicoe arrived on the Enterprise to assume temporary command, he walked onto the bridge and immediately began imposing change with military precision. He wasn't tactful. He wasn't gentle. He didn't attempt to understand the crew's culture. He simply saw Troi wearing something other than regulation attire and demanded she correct it. For many fans, this read as yet another example of Jellicoe steamrolling everyone he interacted with. But from a story perspective, and even a cultural one, his order finally aligned Troi with the rest of the ship. There was something jarring about the way the show framed her. She would stand on the bridge beside Worf in full security armor, Data with his Gold Ops uniform, and Riker with impeccable command reds. And there she was, counseling the captain dressed like she just stepped out of a holistic therapy retreat. The intent may have been progressive, but the optics created narrative friction. Jellicoe's demand resolved that tension instantly. For the first time, she wore the same deep blue uniform that science and medical officers had worn since the pilot episode. She looked confident. She looked like leadership. She looked like she belonged. The difference a uniform makes. Star Trek, as a franchise, understands the power of visual storytelling. Uniforms are a cornerstone of its iconography. The uniform is identity. It is belonging. It is structure and purpose and camaraderie stitched into fabric. The moment Troi appeared in uniform for the rest of the episode, and throughout the remainder of the series when appropriate, she suddenly fit, not just in terms of aesthetics, but in terms of narrative cohesion. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Picard, Riker, and Dr. Crusher not as an other, but as an officer. Her new look also allowed the show to explore facets of her character that had long been overshadowed by costume choices. Troy has a brilliant mind and strong emotional intelligence, but her outfits often made her seem ornamental instead of authoritative. The uniform changed that perception. Marina Sirtis felt it too. Behind the scenes, Marina Sirtis openly advocated for wearing a standard Starfleet uniform long before Jellicoe demanded it on screen. When Season 6 rolled around and she finally got one thanks to the script, her whole relationship with her character improved. She once said, "Greater than, I loved finally wearing the uniform because suddenly people treated Troy as though she mattered." That statement alone validates the narrative choice. Even better, the change allowed other characters to interact with Troy more respectfully. The bridge scenes became more balanced, discussions more serious. Viewers could finally accept her as an officer instead of seeing her as someone whose primary narrative function was emotional support. Jellicoe's worst traits accidentally served the story. Let's be clear. Jellicoe was not a warm presence. He was abrasive, dismissive, borderline antagonistic. He represented the most rigid version of Starfleet Command. His obsession with discipline and hierarchical precision clashed dramatically with the Enterprise D, a ship defined by cooperation, intellectual flexibility, and emotional intelligence. But that rigidity also revealed cracks in TNG's internal logic regarding Troy. Because Jellicoe was so uncompromising, he exposed the discomfort fans had long felt about Troy's inconsistent presentation. His approach lacked tact, but his message was correct. A senior Starfleet officer should dress like one. And in a meta sense, his authoritarian personality forced the narrative forward. If a gentler captain had suggested Troy wear a uniform, the moment wouldn't have landed with the same impact. Jellicoe's bluntness made the shift unavoidable and immediate. Troy went on to shine because of it. Once Troy adopted the uniform full-time in later episodes, she took on more responsibility, and the writers expanded her role in meaningful ways. She even began training for command, a plot point that would have felt implausible if she still wore flowing dresses without insignia. And her arc in episodes like Thine Own Self, where she takes the bridge during a crisis and successfully commands the ship, works specifically because she is presented as an officer, not merely an advisor. The uniform visually affirmed the internal growth. She looked more confident, and that confidence seeped into the writing. Jellicoe's other command decisions still rankle. Just because Jellicoe fixed Troy's wardrobe doesn't mean he gets a free pass for the rest of his actions. He was still a deeply frustrating presence. His dismissal of Riker's expertise created unnecessary conflict. His refusal to collaborate undermined crew morale. His rigid shift schedule made no practical sense aboard a Galaxy-class starship where flexibility was often a strength. He was not a captain designed to be loved.